Hey guys, what's going on? In this video, we will continue with some more Windows x64 game emulation comparison between the 8S Gen 4, the 8 Gen 3 and the 8 Elite. Watch the first video to learn more about the testing methodology and other game performance. These kinds of videos guys take me a lot of time to make. I have to deal with crashes, figure out the best settings, perform the test accurately to ensure no throttling, film the gameplay correctly, edit. So please consider supporting the channel by hitting the subscribe button. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so the first game that we will test today is the Witcher 3 Legacy Edition. Check out the emulation configuration first and then check out the performance. So I'm gonna test this opening section as it's easy to repeat, and here the 8S Gen 4 and the 8 Gen 3 are quite close, but the 8 Gen 3 has less stutters. The 8 Elite meanwhile is a lot faster, but it also has stutters just like the 8S Gen 4, indicating emulation deficiencies compared to the 8 Gen 3. But on the 8 Elite you can actually lock the FPS to 40 FPS and get a super smooth experience. Here is another scene. Sorry, I lost the footage for the 8 Elite for this. So in this cut scenes, the 8S Gen 4 is shockingly performing way better than the 8 Gen 3. It may be possible that I didn't use the best settings for 8 Gen 3 to be honest. Maybe there can be improvements based on the settings. But during combat, once again the 8 Gen 3 was more stable with very few dips in performance. But just note that I was facing the same periodic graphical glitches on the 8 Elite like you see on the 8S Gen 4. No such glitches on the 8 Gen 3. Okay, next game is the Dark Souls of racing games, that is Need for Speed Rivals. Here are the game settings for each SoC first. Now, this game is capped to 30 FPS out of the box, but you can raise the cap to 60 FPS using this launch command. It's good for testing purposes, but I can't recommend it for actual gameplay since it screws up certain aspects like pursuit tech gets sped up by 2 times and also affects jumps. And if you can't hit over 45 FPS, then the game feels quite sluggish. So testing at 60 FPS cap, the 8 Gen 3 by far does the best job. Both 8S Gen 4 and 8 Elite is affected by sporadic, extremely high CPU usage, which slows down the game. Just observe from time to time the CPU usage hits over 90% on both the 8S Gen 4 and the 8 Elite, and the FPS goes down dramatically. On the 8S Gen 4 the FPS can go down to the mid 20s, whereas on the 8 Elite the impact isn't that bad thanks to the beefy Orion CPU cores. The FPS still goes down to the low 40 FPS range and makes the game feel very sluggish. The 8 Elite can easily maintain 60 FPS when the CPU usage is under 90%. Meanwhile, the 8 Gen 3 CPU usage is always under control and the game doesn't feel sluggish as the game is always in the mid 40 FPS range to the mid 50 FPS range. At 30 FPS, the performance improves on the 8S Gen 4 and the game feels a lot more consistent. However, high CPU usage spikes drop the FPS to below 25 FPS, which introduces some sluggishness, which honestly does impact player control at high speed chases in this super chaotic racing game. The 8 Gen 3 is absolutely perfect here. In fact, the 8 Gen 3 can run this game at high settings locked to 30 FPS without breaking a sweat. Finally, here are all the three running the game at 30 FPS. The 8 Gen 3 and 8 Elite is running the game at high settings, meanwhile the 8S Gen 4 is running it at low. Also notice that despite running the same game at same graphic settings and providing the same performance, the GPU usage and the power draw on the 8 Elite is much higher than the 8 Gen 3, indicating that the emulation for this game on the 8 Gen 3 is more efficient. Next up is Doom 2016, and I was only able to get this up and running on the 8 Gen 3. I tried my best, no matter what I changed, I was just not able to boot up the game on the 8S Gen 4 and the 8 Elite, neither OpenGL nor Vulkan. I think some Game Hub update broke this compatibility for these two SoCs. On the 8 Gen 3, I straight away tested at high settings and the game was quite playable with minimal stutters. Next is Batman Arkham Knight, probably the best looking Unreal Engine 3 game, which holds up amazingly well even among the sea of broken Unreal Engine 5 games. Here are the settings. By the way, this is one of the rare games where I found that turnip drivers were much worse for performance compared to the Qualcomm drivers. Now for Arkham Knight, I tested the built-in benchmark first, and here both the 8S Gen 4 and the 8 Gen 3 are neck and neck to each other. Some scenes the 8 Gen 3 takes the lead, in others it's the 8S Gen 4. Meanwhile, the 8 Elite is well ahead of either SoCs. Also notice the crazy power draw on the 8 Elite, my god. At the end of the benchmark, the 8 Gen 3 just edged the 8S Gen 4 by 1 FPS, but the 8 Elite is 50% ahead with 60 FPS average. However, with my 8 Elite configuration, I was actually crashing in game. It would start at 60 FPS but then crash. I changed some settings but it dropped the FPS massively, so again I need to find better settings for 8 Elite. Now between the 8S Gen 4 and 8 Gen 3, the 8S Gen 4 is actually performing better when gliding. I think this is because of the new 8 Elite Gen 5 drivers which I'm using. On ground, fighting enemies, the 8 Gen 3 felt just a bit smoother with less dips and stutters than the 8S Gen 4. Finally, let's test Far Cry 4. Man, this is the game that actually forced me to get a GTX 1050 Ti gaming laptop back in 2018. This game still looks absolutely gorgeous in 2025 and in my opinion is the peak of the Far Cry franchise. It basically perfected the formula set by Far Cry 3 and just cranked the graphical and gameplay element to 11. And oh boy, look at that 8 Elite performance, over 50% faster, sometimes hitting over 100 FPS. And look at that power draw, edging close to 20 watts. Man, the 8 Elite is truly a desktop grade chip with high power scaling. To be honest, you wouldn't actually play the game like this. Locking the FPS to 40 FPS dramatically lowers the power draw. Meanwhile, the 8S Gen 4 and the 8 Gen 3 are neck and neck to each other. The 8 Gen 3 is just a bit less stuttery, just barely. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like, share and subscribe. Take care and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.